What's up guys, and welcome back to Motorcycles Off-Road. And if you're new here and this is not a welcome back, then maybe consider subscribing, because I'll work hard to make you content on motorcycles, dual sports, adventure riding, all that type of stuff that you're into, because that's why you clicked on the video. So let me earn your sub. Maybe you're looking to get into dual sporting, or maybe you're looking to get a second bike because you have a friend that wants to get into dual sporting. That's what this video is about. This video is about picking up a motorcycle for $3,000 or less, currency adjustment depending on your area of course, but I want to guide you to getting a nice, inexpensive, reliable second-hand dual sport. I'm going to point out the bonuses and the negatives of these motorcycles, and no one knows better than me because I've owned every motorcycle on this list I'm about to show you. So I have first-hand information to tell you what's good and what could be annoying. Currently, all over the world, we are experiencing a hike in price of petrol, so there's never been a better time than now to get yourself a dual sport to take advantage of the incredible gas mileage you get from one of these single-cylinder motorcycles. But before we completely get into the video, I have a big announcement for the channel. It's been about 1 year since I started the channel. We've been doing great. You guys have been awesome. And now we have started our Patreon. Our Patreon has 4 different tiers. We have multiple different benefits and more content. If you're like me, you watch a lot of YouTube, you try to gather as much information as possible, and I'm basically running out of dual sport content. So I started checking out more people's Patreons, and then I decided to make one myself. You'll have new content, behind the scenes content, new videos every month, new videos every week, as well as a t-shirt and sticker club. So all I ask is just check it out and check out my intro video. Just that alone, I'd be greatly appreciative. So besides all that, let's get into the video and let's talk about the top dual sports you should be interested to pick up for under $3,000. Okay, number one inexpensive bike that I think you should pick up used is the KLR 250. I've had 3 of these motorcycles. I have 2 currently, one that I'm currently working on in my garage right now, and another one that I have just as a parts bike. This bike is fantastic. It's good for a beginner, it's good for intermediate. As I go through these bikes, I made little cheat sheets of some information that you guys might find useful. The KLR 250 has a 6-speed transmission, has a CVK 34 carburetor, which I'll tell you about that in a second. It has a good fuel tank at 2.9 US gallons or 11 liters. The seat height is 33.7 inches, which is pretty mild. A lot of people can handle that. They were in production all the way up to 2005, and if you're lucky and you find a 1985 to 1987 like I have here, it came stock with 28 horsepower. Now keep in mind, that's more horsepower than the WR250, than the 300L, than the KLX 300. These are solid motorcycles. I feel they were pretty advanced for their time, and like all motorcycles on this list, they're single-cylinder carbureted motorcycles, so they will last forever. The miles on these bikes is not that big of an issue. If you pick one up with 8,000 or 9,000 miles, there's plenty of life left in these motorcycles. Now, as with any of these bikes, they're going to have their drawbacks. The drawback with this motorcycle is its kickstart only. But back to the carburetor. The CVK 34 is a great carburetor to work on, and in fact, the choke lever is not really a choke lever, it's a fuel enrichment lever. So how that works is pretty awesome. So anytime it's cold or the bike doesn't want to start, you can just hit this lever, and it doesn't have to be cold, even if the bike's warmed up. What that's going to do is it's going to open a valve at the top of the carburetor that's going to put more fuel directly into the engine. And if you ever had a carbureted bike that's running more rich, it makes it very easy to start. So this bike's not that hard to kick, but that is a drawback, and with this carb, it makes it a bit better. Now at 28 horsepower, it's pretty solid, but there's a couple tricks that you can even get more ponies out of. Besides the fact that you could do a 3x3 mod like you could a DRZ 400, a very simple modification, if you drill the hole on the slide, it's a 7/64, and put a little shim washer underneath the needle valve, this is called the 22-cent mod, and this bike performs so much better and it has so much better throttle response, even more than it had before. Super simple, amazing motorcycle, can be found for around $2,000. I think if you're looking, this is a solid option. Alright, the next motorcycle. This one is true and dear to my heart, and that is the DR350. Now, if you've watched my Honda 300L versus DRZ 400 video, you will see I've owned 2 DR350s, and that was the SE models. You want to look for the E model because the E model has electric start. These are amazing motorcycles. They're nice and light, they're very powerful, they have a seat height of 35 inches, and in fact, I kind of didn't like the way Suzuki went with their DRZ 400, making it a bigger engine but higher seat height and only 5-speed transmission. I kept my DRZ 350, but then when the Honda 300L came out, this bike and the Honda 300L might as well be in the same family because they are very similar. In its heyday, coming off the showroom floor, this bike produced 33 horsepower and 25 foot-pounds of torque. This is probably one of my favorite bikes of all time. It was in production all the way up to 2001, and they're known for their bulletproof reliability. Now the problem is, if you could get a deal with this bike, that's going to be great, but you can expect to spend around $3,000 top dollar for a nice clean one. The only drawbacks is this is something Suzuki does with a DRZ 400, as well as the 350. I don't like the oil in the frame. It's kind of weird. You have multiple drain plugs. It's not that bad. I mean, once you learn how to do it, but it is strange pulling your dipstick out of the front neck of the bike. Another big drawback is there's little to no aftermarket for this bike. And that kind of sucks. When you move to DRZ 400, there's tons of aftermarket parts, but I guess the DR350 was a little ahead of its time and people just weren't into doing too many modifications. Either way, I highly recommend this motorcycle. You could get away using it as a beginner, but it definitely can satisfy you as a more advanced rider. Alright, number 3 on my list. Now this is going to be the easiest bike to ride. I had a beautiful XT225. This was a great motorcycle for anyone to learn. This is the motorcycle you pick up as a spare bike for your buddy to ride, or even your girlfriend. Your girlfriend can ride this bike easily. It's easy to learn, and it has a 31.9 inch seat height. Very mild, and anytime someone gets into trouble, they can easily just put a foot down. Newer riders tend to ride slow. Riding slow, you have no momentum, and the bike is not balanced very well, so newer riders tend to put their foot down a lot. With a short seat height of this motorcycle, it lends itself well to a new rider. Now it does have a 6-speed transmission, and that's the one saving grace of this motorcycle. I would say if you wanted to commute on something like a TW200 or a DR200, you might have some trouble. I mean, I was able to get mine up to 55, 60 pretty fast, and I don't know everyone's situation, but just having that extra gear in the transmission really makes a difference when you're doing open roads at 55, 60 miles an hour anyway. Now the good thing about this motorcycle is it was in production all the way up to 2007, and then it was replaced with the XT250, another great motorcycle. If you can get your hands on the XT250, you will have the luxury of fuel injection plus a rear disc brake. The 225 comes with a drum in the rear. I did sell mine, and someone drove 8 hours to buy it off me because of how clean mine was and how well taken care of it was. And he said where he's from, there's tons of rocks and mountains, and a lot of the smaller bikes up there get beat up and the frames are all smashed in, and mine was perfect for what he was looking for. Now the drawbacks of this motorcycle, there's not many, but the big thing is very low in power. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe it's somewhere around 20 horsepower, 22 horsepower maybe, and like 14 foot-pounds of torque. So it's very low powered, and being the way the transmission is set up, it kind of feels sluggish. You're not going to be pulling any dank wheelies unless you sit really far back on the seat, and it's harder to break the tire loose. But once again, there's drawbacks, plus minuses for every single motorcycle you could buy, and this is a solid addition to anybody stable as a spare, or if you're a learner, or for your girlfriend. Alright, next, I can recommend the XT350 reluctantly. I say reluctantly. I had one. It was an okay bike. It's not amazing. I would choose any of the other bikes on this list before it, besides maybe the XT225. If you're looking for more power, the XT350 definitely has it. Now, the good things about it is it has a huge fuel tank. It comes with over 3 gallons. And then my particular one had an aftermarket tank, a tank that held 5 gallons of fuel. Thing felt like it could just run forever. XT350 comes in at a dry weight of 120 kilograms or 264 pounds. I would suspect another at least 30 pounds added to that dry weight. And before anyone types in the comments like they do, 30 pounds, well, yes, because wet weight counts full of fuel, and with such a big fuel tank, that does weigh the bike down as well. Now, I put up to 32 horsepower. Some models say they produce 32 horsepower, but mostly I've seen 28, 29 horsepower in the high 20s with 22 foot-pounds of torque. All around a solid, powerful motorcycle, and right at that dual sport sweet spot. These bikes were produced all the way up to the year 2000, and they can be found for somewhere around $2,000 to $3,000, depending on how beat up. I've seen some beat up ones for like $1,500, and if you're willing to put the work into, you could have a really nice motorcycle. Now, there is some drawbacks to this motorcycle that I really dislike. Mine, it was hard to kick. I could get it going, but after all day of riding and say maybe you had to pick it up, it would be a pain just to kick this thing. You would have to take a minute. I really miss the electric start that the DR350 has, and the dual carb carbs, they kind of suck. So Yamaha had this time period where they were putting these dual carbs on these bikes, and also something like you find on the Raptor 660, which is something else I own. You have one carb that handles the low range and you have another carb that handles the higher RPMs. The problem is they're very hard to tune right unless you're really used to it, and when they get gummed up, it's like twice as much to clean and twice as much to worry about. It's just a huge pain. So that's why I put this one at the bottom of the list. I feel like it's hit or miss depending on what you're looking for, if you want the XT250 or the XT350. 350 obviously having more power, and the 250 being very mild but having all the comfort features. Now, my question to you guys is, do you know any motorcycles that would fit this category that I left out? I've had tons of dual sports and dirt bikes, but I haven't had them all. Maybe like the Super Sherpa, that's a cool motorcycle I've never had. And if I want to talk about dual sports, like honorable mentions that I would like to get again, would be a KDX 200. If you've never rode a KDX 200, they are so fun. Not good commuter bikes. Maybe you could gear them to be okay commuter bikes, but they're two-stroke 200. They're light and they're great in the woods. They're like a mini KX 250 with a really heavy flywheel that can just keep going and ripping through trails. Nice and light, man, that's an awesome bike. I've had two in the past and I sold them, and I wish I had one right now because they're fun just to jump on and rip. If you can find and clean one of them for $2,000 to $3,000, maybe consider picking that up, especially if your commute is short. Maybe add a tooth to the front sprocket and be one of the only people in the road riding a two-stroke back and forth to work. But in any case, I hope you find some value in this video. Maybe one of these motorcycles are on your Facebook Marketplace. You can pick one up for cheap and start getting into that sweet, sweet, beautiful dual sport goodness. But alright guys, my name is Andrew, and this is Motorcycles Off-Road. And if you get a chance, don't forget to check out the new Patreon. Thanks guys, stay safe out there, and I'll catch you in the next one. Luna, see Luna? She's a sheepdog boxer mix. The most well-trained dog you'll ever meet. And I'm rocking the 550 performance shirt. Thank you for sending this out to me. This shirt's super cool. Anyway, you know how long it took me to do this intro? Man, I had so many bloopers. I kept stumbling over my words because I don't usually use the camera. But anyway, I should stop wasting your guys' time.